When you smell sulfur or that rotten egg smell, it's a sign that not only do you have unpleasant odor of your water, but something is seriously wrong with your water supply. Many homeowners wrestle with this issue, and they usually apply temporary fixes. And they're not addressing the real root or underlying cause. But what if it's just the beginning? What if it's just a sign of something bad coming? So let's explore together what's causing that rotten egg smell and what are some of the solutions that you can do in order to better impact your home and your family. Because of course we know we want to protect your home and your family. Now today, this water droplet really does fit the need. And so when we deal with rotten egg smell, majority of the time we're talking to people who live on a private well. And the reason being is that cities are required by law to add chlorine to the water. And when we add chlorine to the water, guess what? Hydrogen sulfide, which is the culprit, which looks like this black dot on here, actually is what's making the water smell. So in those particular cases, adding chlorine will oxidize that sulfur off that water droplet, and they don't have that bad smell. Or if you live on well water, the second cause, not just sulfur, could be iron bacteria. Yes, iron bacteria, which has got it's like a bacteria, it's a slime bacteria that feeds on an iron molecule and then and grows and grows and grows. And then when that water droplet hits the aerator of your faucet, guess what? You now get that odor lofting up, especially in a small bathroom. People notice it right away, or if they have their head over a laundry sink and doing laundry, or all over a dish sink and they're doing dishes and they smell it and they're wondering what the heck's going on. A lot of times the water heater accentuates the smell, making it actually even more smelly. So if you're having that problem, we're going to address that today in this video. By the way, if you like this video, please press share, like it, share it with your friends and family who live on a private well, because they certainly may be wrestling with this as well. So hydrogen sulfide. Now, when you Google rotten egg smell, every single document talks about hydrogen sulfide. So we are going to address that first and foremost. Hydrogen sulfide, what is it? Well, when we drill a hole, if this is the earth and we drill a hole into the ground, which is your private well, what's underneath that? Well, there is a layer of bedrock and your water sits in that bedrock. Now, what else is in that bedrock? Well, there's decomposing trees, decomposing animal, and that, as that decomposes, they turn black in color. They attach them to the water droplet. Then guess what happens? Your well pumps that water up and into your pressure tank and then through the plumbing of your home, and as it hits the aeration faucet, the shower faucet, whatever, as it hits air oxidizes that sulfur, creating that rotten egg smell. So this is very, very, very common on well water. The way you tell if you have sulfur is that you can go to your toilet bowl, take the lid off the back of the toilet bowl in that reservoir and look in the back of there. If on the bottom of that reservoir below the bobber that's in there, if you see like black soot, like from a fireplace, that's sulfur. That's how you know, because again, water is sitting in this open air environment. The air is oxidizing that off and it's falling to the bottom of that toilet tank. Boom, you know you have sulfur. So that sulfur is something that we can treat with a variety of different filter systems, as long as you don't have sulfur bacteria. Yes, I'm going to complicate this a little bit. Sometimes there's a slime bacteria that's covering the water droplet. And guess what? That slime is feeding on what one thing? Yes, sulfur bacteria. So the food source for that slime bacteria is sulfur. How do you know if you have that? Again, keep the lid off the back. If the walls have a slime on the walls, guess what? You probably have sulfur bacteria. That drastically changes the type of treatment system we need to use. So your toilet tank is our indicator. Yeah, it's actually something, it's like a petri dish for your house. So you're in a private well. I can't tell you how many people are like, they call me and they're like, oh my God, I don't understand. Why did I buy this house? It's like, don't worry. We're here to help you. Yes, the EPA, the Department of Health, the CDC, everyone basically tells you, you are the water authority for your family. If you got sulfur in your water, it's highly likely you need to learn just enough to be dangerous so you can be able to treat it with the right filter system. So you know it is complicated. Here's how we tell one way or the other. It is now you that is armed, you got in your back pocket, so you can invite a professional to come in. If they are not looking in your toilet, if not, they're not sending your water out to an independent lab, then they're guessing. And I promise you, how do I know this? Because when I first came on board here over 25 years ago, we guessed. And then we had to go back out there because I was adamant about having a great rapport. I wanted to create raving fans, right? And so how do you create a raving fan? Well, they can't complain. So here we are guessing. We'd call a distributor. We'd get online. They say, use this special filter. We'd buy it, sell it. And then all of a sudden people would call me back and like, hey, there's a problem. And it's like, what do you mean there's a problem? Well, we didn't truly test the water. We didn't take the lid off the back of the toilet to see if there's slime in there. And are we applying the right chemistry? So water treatment, when we're treating this bad guy, what is it? Actually, it's a good guy, right? It's actually very, very important to us. I mean, don't forget you're 65% water, your brain's 90% water. So this guy's really important. Well, the thing about this water is that when you've pumped that into your home, you have a few choices of what kind of system you want to use. And understanding what type of sulfur problem you have is paramount in order to pick the right filter system. You don't want to hope that a company is going to be like us, where we literally had to go back to people's homes and with our tail between our legs and say we're sorry. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. We had a client who actually was that client. I'll never forget it. Right, the client called me up and they're like, "Are you the owner?" And I was answering the phone that day. I said, "Yes, I am." And he's like, "I want you to get your, expletive, to my house. I want to be able to talk to you face to face." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'll come out." So I go to back then we didn't have computers, so I grabbed this folder, went out to his house, and I show up at his house. He's like, "Come downstairs." And I go, by the way, he was in Long Grove, Illinois. So I go, "Okay, let's go downstairs." So we go downstairs, and I'm looking, and I can see our water filter, and there it is. It's not even connected to the plumbing. Another company's water filter with a sticker on it, it's not connected to the plumbing. And a third one that was connected to the plumbing. And he looks at me, he goes, "Now, why did all three of those not work?" I'm like, I don't really know. I mean, you're mad at me, but I'm like, "You've disconnected it." He goes, "I disconnected it 2 years ago because you promised me, your company promised me." And I go, "Yeah, I can see we stopped servicing you around then." He's like, "Yeah, but you can't." And I go, my company came out like 5 times that last year at no charge because we wanted to make things right with you. He's like, "Yeah, but you couldn't do it." So I called that company. They said they could do it. Same problem. That company, they won't even answer the damn phone anymore. Just so you know, that's what happens in a lot of dealers. This is why you want to find a professional grade company, right? A true professional who has a good reputation on there, because that was a great example about how a company just working as Chuck in the truck. And what he did for that client is he's like, I know what he did is he just said, "Do not answer." So he hasn't been answering the call. It goes right to voicemail every time. So he's like, "So I'm flustered and I'm mad at you and you're the only one that answered the phone, so fix it." And I had to go back and I didn't know the answer. So I called the distributor that we buy the products from, and they were like, "Nah, yeah, same thing. It should have been working." And then I called the Department of Public Health, and the Department of Public Health said, "Mr. Wilson, have you tested the water with an independent lab? Have you looked for that slime in the back of the toilet?" I said, "No." And they go, "Well, why don't you do that? Because that's going to be paramount in you fixing this." And they're like, "We're kind of sick and tired of you guys, fly-by-night guys, here one day, gone the next, and you're just taking people's money." And I'm like, "Oh my God." And he goes, "By the way, Mr. Wilson, the other thing is that you're not a licensed plumbing company." And I go, "Yeah." And he's like, "It's against the law for you to install products, water filters, unless you're a licensed plumbing company." I was like, "Oh boy." So we became a licensed plumbing company before long, set that as a goal, and then I understood that we had to look for that slime bacteria. And yes, the back of that toilet had slime. I learned from that experience that we needed to use chlorine. Chlorine kills the bacteria, the slime bacteria, and it acts as an oxidant, which helps pull that off the water droplet. And that's all achievable down in the basement of the home. and then the water went back through the house. In that example, what we did with that client obviously is I told them that, hey, whatever you paid me is since the system is a part of a whole chlorine injection system, you pay me the difference between that one and a full chlorinator. As long as it works, you pay me the difference. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to charge you. He shook my hand. He looked at me in the eye. He's like, I'm a believer that I can look a man in the eye and they can shake their hand and he's going to be a man of his word. And I said, absolutely. I'm old school like that. And lo and behold, that solution solved the problem. So going back to that, sorry for the side note, but the side note story is a good example about why you are the water authority for your family. We're going to put a link down here that's going to go to the EPA well water document to teach you how important it is that you test your water on a regular basis, that you get armed and dangerous with what you know with that water test, so you can go back out and tell a water treatment company, I want this, I want that, and I want to make sure that, or you ask them the questions and then you're going to know right away if you have sulfur bacteria and they offer you a carbon filter, you're going to go, that won't work. So I don't want you. You're going to need to find a true professional that understands that it's probably going to need ozone or chlorine in order to get that sulfur bacteria out. Now, regular sulfur, yes, we can use if it's regular sulfur, we can use a carbon filter that actually has teeth to it and can bite that sulfur, and then every other night that carbon filter is cleaning itself, and when we turn on the water through the control valve, reverse backwards, what happens is that teeth lets go of that sulfur and flushes it down the drain, then it's ready to go over and over and over again. By the way, a chlorine system actually does mean that we inject chlorine, mix it in a mixing tank, then we run into a carbon filter to take the chlorine out. There's a lot of companies who will try to sell you a chlorine drawing carbon filter. All that means is the carbon filter is biting at the water all day, and then at night it uses chlorine out of a Clorox bottle to actually clean the teeth of the carbon. That's not an effective way. We find that those don't last very long. So yes, pro tip, there's a very large company out there on the marketplace that sells a chlorine drawing filter, and they call it a special name, and they sell a lot of them, and they don't work when there's a sulfur bacteria issue. Now what ends up happening is a lot of these times when we use chlorine drawing carbon filters, we might get you past a year, and then you pass the 1-year warranty, and we don't have to come back anymore. So again, we want to go back to water testing, and water testing says if we have sulfur bacteria, you must mix the chlorine in a big contact tank, a big vessel, like, I don't know, those water towers you see in cities. They inject chlorine in there and it has the chance to sit there and lumber with the chlorine to kill the chlorine in the water to kill the bacteria. Same sort of analogy. We need contact time for the chlorine to actually kill the bacteria, help oxidize the stuff off the water droplet, and then we use carbon to take the chlorine back out. Carbon filters alone on sulfur, again, if we go to the back of that toilet and there's this black soot like on the bottom of a fireplace on the back of that toilet, we can use a carbon filter to take that sulfur out. We can use a chlorine drawing carbon filter to take that off. We can use oxygen. So there are some products out there that injects air into a contact tank and the air pops that off. Those work very, very, very well when it's sulfur only, because you're using oxygen to pop that off. You could use hydrogen peroxide to help pop that off. In some cases, when we deal with really high levels of sulfur, we're talking 5 to 10 parts per million, we have to, and that's about where we got to get started on, a double system where we use oxygen, then chlorine. So those people have to buy 2 systems, because you have to remember, one system alone can only handle so many parts per million. Heck, I've dealt with 20 parts per million. That's where someone would go turn on sprinkle their yard and their neighbors can smell their water. You know, they put on outdoor irrigation, they're like, what do we do? And unfortunately for outside irrigation, there's not much you can do at all. There is some things that we've done that's helped, but it's very complicated to be able to treat irrigation systems. But inside the home, we really need to be able to apply both air and chlorine in order to handle some of those high levels of sulfur in the water. Again, hydrogen sulfide is the first stage of petroleum. Yes, and a lot of people go, oh my God, am I rich? And it's like, no, unfortunately, you're not rich. Unfortunately, that's an issue. Now, let's talk about how people can temporarily fix this. Now, don't let this scare you because you can solve the problem. You are the water authority for your family. Once you get the right system in, we keep them going for 5 to 10 years, and then sometimes we just have to change filter material or something else on the system, and people are very, very happy. But if you are looking for a temporary fix, what do you see online? Well, people say dump chlorine down a well shaft and it will oxidize the sulfur inside the aquifer. Again, if we've got a hole drilling down through a well, you're killing it in a pocket of water down there, and yes, that gives you a temporary fix. You might get 2 months, maybe a little longer. If you have high levels of sulfur, you ain't even going to get 2 days. I mean, we've had 20 parts per million of sulfur, and it's back in 2 days. So chlorinating your well can be done. Many states are starting to outlaw that, because I'll give you a story of Kathy Badovanak in South Barrington. We proposed a chlorine system for her. She didn't do it. She shocked her well with a professional well company, and guess what? An oil vein opened up inside of her aquifer, and then now she had literally oil in her water. Now it took us to use multiple systems to address that issue. We first needed a special type of carbon to take out the oil, and then we were able to use chlorine injection to address that water. So not a big fan of chlorinating your well. If you're looking to sell the home, flip it, yes, that could temporarily fix it. However, in most cases, it is not going to solve the problem, because it is a pocket of oil, hydrogen sulfide, that's mixing with your water, and it's not like you dug that out and got rid of it. You just shocked it to oxidize that sulfur off the pocket of water nearest your well pump. Well, guess what? Before long, you use that water, and what fills it? It's, again, that sulfur water. So it's not a long-term solution to your issue. So that said, hydrogen sulfide is a little bit a complicated situation. If you need help with that, please feel free to reach out to us, angelwater.com, or you can call us at 847-382-7800. Remember, you're going to find our link to the EPA document that talks about you being the water authority for your family. And I promise you one thing, even if you have this rotten egg smell and you take a shower and you're like, oh my God, it smelled like this all day. You wash your clothing, you got it, and you're like, I hate this. I promise you, it's a natural organic. In bad cases, it's not good for you to inhale that. That's like over 5 parts per million. We find people having very bad health problems as a result of inhaling that in a shower. But in general terms, we're just talking about a natural organic that's in the water, and drinking low levels of it is not that big of a problem. But if that smell is a nuisance, if you don't like going to work smelling a little like that, if you got yourself a date and you don't like smelling like that with your spouse or whatever, you want to address that. Again, the simple solutions are to first identify how much you have, how many parts per million you have. Second, determine if you have an iron bacteria or sulfur bacteria issue with it. The smell can come from iron bacteria. No different. If your water color in that toilet is orange, you probably have an iron bacteria, and it just smells like rotten eggs. So sulfur can get confusing. This was a sulfur video. If you'd like to learn more about iron bacteria issues, you can check out some of our other videos on iron bacteria, which can cause that. Again, if you take the lid off the back of that toilet and you see orange staining in there, most likely iron bacteria. Now you must use chlorine injection or ozone, depending upon how much you have in there, to be able to address that issue. But when it comes to sulfur, I hope what this has done is educated that you're the water authority for your family. Test your water, test for bacteria, then decide to have a professional come out and keep that in your back pocket, right? Keep that back there. See what they do. If they don't recommend water testing, bye-bye. I suggest that you find a company that actually understands that. Again, you can always reach out to us if you need a little further help, because as you know, my name is Drew, and I am here to serve all of you.